Can I get your thoughts, first of all, on the current state of the conflict, which, according to all the reports, is getting bloody and very attritional?
Yes, it is. It's into the fourth month, of course, and it's certainly made less progress than people would have hoped for even a couple of months ago. They are making progress, but it is relatively small gains, and they are taking big hits. There's no point in pretending otherwise. The key issue here is the operational level, really, rather than the day-to-day tactical fighting. Is overall what's happening going to achieve some sort of breakthrough in the short to medium term?
Yeah.
And it has to be said that's looking less likely. The weather inevitably is against them, time is running out, and so on. So even if they were to make a breakthrough at the moment, and they've got through a couple of the lines, the Russian lines in the south in particular, what they would have wanted to do was to penetrate those lines and then exploit them by moving through heavy armor and conducting what we would call maneuver warfare operations. The bottom line is they are stuck in attritional fighting.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it's not going to produce anything, but it is certainly not going as well as we would have hoped and anticipated. Well, maybe not anticipated, but certainly hoped a couple of months ago.
I was reading another strategic expert, Tim, who was comparing Russian strategy to World War One, a process of exhausting Ukraine's supply of personnel and equipment.
Yeah, I know exactly who you were reading, because I was reading it too, and I know him quite well. I mean, he has used that example, and I have, without having read him, I've used the example of partly in the way that the media, to be honest, presents this, but also British politicians and others. It is rather reminiscent of 1916 in some cases, of very small meters of advance, yards of advance, as it was in those days, taking large casualties. The difference for 1918, which was what he was talking about, is that the Germans pushed hard, ran out of steam, reached a critical, what we call a culminating point, and we were then able to exploit it. Not dissimilar, it has to be said, to Kursk, the Battle of Kursk, when the Germans made their penetrative attacks, and then the Russians were able to come either side of them and close that, that penetration.
Yeah.
And there is a part of me that is a bit concerned for the Ukrainians that if they do break through, the Russians could come in from both flanks.
Yes.
Now, actually, the other issue that was raised, I think, and I've certainly raised before, is are the Russians sitting back, rebuilding their reserves,
Yes.
in particular rebuilding stocks of ammunition and missiles and so on. That visit by the North Korean leader the other day as part of that, that conversation, in order to then be able to achieve their own counterattack. It may be in the new year, maybe as early as January. I mean, this is all speculation, but
yes,
possible. And those similes of 1916 and the attritional warfare, 1918 and the attempt of a breakthrough are not, they're not bad examples of what has been going on and could go on.
Yeah, which is why a lot of people are watching the prospect of talks between Kim Jong-un and Putin so closely. I know there's a limit to what we know about North Korea and what it's got and what it can do. Is North Korea, as we understand it, capable of being a significant contributor to the Russian war effort?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? And what do we mean by significant? I mean, they have been providing equipment, ammunition, so on, for about a year or so. And there's no doubt that Russia needs its artillery ammunition stocks, its missile stocks. What I think is interesting in this is, and this is pure speculation, are the Koreans ramping up their production so that they can become a significant player, if they haven't already been one, in return for what? Question mark. And that could be something to do with nuclear technology. I mean, that would be the worst case scenario. So I don't want to, be too speculative, but there must be some conversation going on between the two, why this meeting happened, why it happened now. And it may well be that Russia is needing to rebuild these stocks in preparation for some sort of counteroffensive. And that the Koreans are going to want something in return. I mean, the easiest answer is they're going to want food and oil and raw materials, which of course they're desperate for because half their population is starving to death.
Yeah.
So Russia could certainly provide that. The question is, how much is North Korea asking for in these conversations?
Well, that's an interesting question. And if we're wondering who are going to be Russia's significant partners, then China is going to be top of the list of concerns. China insists it's not engaging in anything like a full bloody way, but you never quite know what they are doing.
No, you don't. But if I'm honest, I don't like China much. I don't like what they've done to Hong Kong and what they're doing in all sorts of ways, and their economy is clearly in problems at the moment. But I'm not convinced that they're lying about that. They don't want Russia to lose, and they will probably provide what is necessary to ensure that they don't lose, however we define losing. But I'm not convinced that they are, pouring in large quantities of materiel, as in ammunition, and spares, etc. So I suspect they're certainly an ally. They're on Russia's side as part of that sort of anti-Western coalition, if you like. But I'm not convinced they're putting huge amounts of stuff into the fight.
Yeah. Now, look, can I get your thoughts lastly on the Wagner private army? I mean, Putin has effectively cut the head off the beast, cut the head off the snake. Evgeny Prigozhin is dead, and so are other leading commanders of the Wagner group. How do they fit into the picture now?
Well, of course, they've just been, or about to be, I think something is going to be laid before Parliament, an order to be laid before Parliament to turn the Wagner group into a named terrorist organization. So, the same status as Boko Haram, Hamas, and so on.
I mean, that's pretty symbolic in Britain's case because they don't have a presence here.
No, they don't. But from a UK point of view, it means, firstly, that anybody who supports in any way or becomes a member of Wagner can be prosecuted. And secondly, it opens up the ability to sue in courts, in the UK courts, to get reparation, if you like. Now, Wagner as a terrorist organization doesn't surprise me. I mean, at the end of the day, they are effectively a terrorist organization. But as a result of the air crash, the question that's floating around, of course, is what happens to Wagner in the short to medium term? What happens to their operations in Africa? And in particular, what happens to the support they've been providing in this fight in Ukraine? I don't think there's any doubt, certainly in my mind, that what the Russians would like to do is to bring the Wagner group back, if you like, under command. I mean, they've been in support, but fairly separate from the chain of command thus far. And I think Russia would like to bring them back a little bit more under command and under control. But there is a balance there because they like to use them to do things that Russia itself wouldn't like to be seen to be doing from an international perspective. And Wagner have made a difference. And in fact, it was Wagner that put together the initial work with North Korea for them to send ammunition and so forth. So, there's a balance there somewhere. I don't think prescribing them as a terrorist organization is going to make much difference, certainly to the people in Wagner or in Russia. But how they, emerge over the next few months in terms of the fight in Ukraine is going to be interesting to watch.